With Will on 531 BI.
It is Pacific Mornings. It's great to be in your company this morning. I'm William Terite in the driver's seat with you through until 9 a.m. Now, a new Amnesty International report says Aotearoa's migration system is failing Pacific people most affected by climate change, calling it discriminatory and a breach of human rights. The report, Navigating Injustice, highlights how current visa rules exclude many Tuvaluans and Kiribati, especially those who are older, disabled or living with health conditions, forcing some families apart. To talk about the findings and what changes are being called for, I'm joined by Kate Schuetze, Amnesty International Regional Researcher, Pacific Islands and Climate Justice, and co-author of the report as well. Bulavanaka, thank you very much for your time.
Bulavanaka, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Look, what were the key findings from this report in terms of what makes Aotearoa's migration system discriminatory in your view?
I think particularly what we found here is that the people that are most impacted by the effects of the climate change and experiencing significant hardship in the countries of Tuvalu and Kiribati are the people that are unable to migrate and seek a better way of life. And I think this issue has been miscategorized as not being sort of a significant enough issue for the New Zealand government to respond to in terms of reforming its migration policies. So particularly we heard from Sam, who has a disability in Tuvalu. He's able to help his family out with his chores around town, but he has an undiagnosed disability because the healthcare system is quite poor. And what we know from the climate crisis is that people with disabilities are more impacted when their homes flood, when the sea levels rise, and when they have storms across the Pacific as well. However, the requirements for visas coming to New Zealand set the bar so high in terms of acceptable standard of health that it's impossible for Sam to move to Aotearoa New Zealand with his family and to be with them, and that's all he wanted to do when he spoke with us.
Thank you for that. I mean, I suppose we often hear New Zealand described as, a close partner to Pacific nations. How do these policies align or perhaps even clash with that kind of relationship or that rhetoric?
I think this is part of the challenge is there are close ties between Aotearoa, New Zealand and the Pacific Island countries, and we're calling on them to sort of show leadership in this space by being a bit more progressive and understanding how human rights standards have changed and evolved, particularly with the ICJ advisory opinion on climate change this year. So they need to do more to ensure that the migration policies are reformed and they factor in the issue of climate change and climate displacement, not just as a driver of why people move, but to stop deporting people to countries where they are significantly impacted by climate change and disasters. And in particular with Tuvalu and Kiribati, we found that the situation is so severe that Aotearoa New Zealand should not be deporting people back there. The existential threat from rising sea levels and the impact that's having on the right to life with dignity is so significant that they need to reconsider and reform how these cases are decided.
Indeed. The report, as you kind of mentioned as well, let's dig into that deeper. The report included powerful stories of families being separated. I mean, could you elaborate on, in terms of some of the stories that came about?
Yeah, so we also had the case of Alieta, not her real name, who's referred to in the report. She has a visual impairment. She applied for the PAC visa system to get to Aotearoa, New Zealand with her husband and her daughter, who was 9 years old at the time. It was only until she got to the later stages, the application form, that there were any questions about her disability. So she had no idea when they applied as a family unit that her disability would be a factor in not allowing her family to go. And Alieta, like many others we spoke to, said that, they come under this indirect pressure because they have to miss out on opportunities for their family, for their children, that ability to work and be able to send money home to their families in the islands. So this is a very difficult choice to make. Alieta made the difficult decision for her husband and her daughter to go to Aotearoa, New Zealand, and she's been prevented from visiting it ever since, and that was about 8 or 9 years ago. So, these heartbreaking testimonies of how these policies are resulting in family separation and violation of the rights of the child, I think are quite significant in this case, and something that I wasn't expecting to come out so strongly in terms of the research we did.
Indeed. Look, what does a rights-based approach to climate displacement look like in terms of practice, say for New Zealand's immigration system?
Yeah, I think in this case, it requires an analysis of the country's situation and the effects of the climate crisis. I think it's not enough to say everyone is suffering the same from the climate crisis, because we know that's not true, that climate crisis is a threat multiplier. So people who have disabilities, for example, or medical conditions, or older people might be impacted very differently when it comes to some of the effects of climate change. So it's about looking at the situation in these countries, as well as looking at the individual circumstances for that case, and taking a holistic approach to their circumstances and understanding whether or not their most basic human rights can be respected, protected, and upheld.
And look, just before we wrap it up, I mean, COP30 is coming up as well. I suppose one of my frustrations with COP, and many as well, is it often feels as though nothing tangible ever comes from it, in terms of these big emitters not really doing anything, pulling their weight. What message are you hoping this report sends to world leaders, especially those high-emitting countries?
I think this is really critical that, when we're talking about climate displacement, not everyone expressed a desire to move, but putting their wishes and choice and agency at the forefront of that, it's critically important to how policy reform is done in this space. And I think, the responsibility for Aotearoa New Zealand and other major emitting countries comes in terms of adaptation and climate financing, and making sure that those people who also wish to stay in their island homes are able to do so and adapt as much as possible, and for as long as possible. I mean, we know the effects of the rising sea levels are irreversible, but there's much more that could be done across the region to really support these countries who rank amongst the lower income and the least developed countries in the world.
Kate Schuetze,
And
Amnesty.
also the lowest emitters.
Yeah, no, I agree on that point. Hey, look, that is Kate Schuetze, Amnesty International Regional Researcher, Pacific Islands and Climate Justice, and co-author of the report. We'll have a full story up on this on our website, www.pmn.co.nz. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Tanaka.
You're listening to